Alex.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hi.
Saccacitta. Good to see you've been renamed.
Yes.
Okay, you know live, see the body.
Okay. Well, welcome to those on YouTube. We'll just take about 5 minutes for people to arrive on Zoom and for Saccacitta to arrive as well, who's going to be running the evening. I'll just briefly say something about him and then we'll launch with this evening's program. Hi, Paul. Nice to see you.
You too. Hello, everybody. Thank you.
Hi. There's Alex, who won't be Alex for long. Is that not right, Alex? Sorry to out you in public, but you'll have a 25-syllable name soon, won't you?
He's muted.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Deliberately.
Sorry, I couldn't hear that.
Oh, I say you won't be Alex for long. You'll have a 25-syllable name soon.
Steady. It's got to be 26.
Oh, dear.
Hello, Paul. Hi, Paul.
So here's Saccacitta. As I say, we'll begin in about 3 minutes when just allow people to arrive. Truth is, everybody never turns up on time on Zoom, but actually they don't even at the Buddhist Centre, so it's not that different. Saccacitta will know that from doing led meditations at lunchtime and things like that.
Yes.
Still wandering in 5 minutes late usually, so it's nothing new.
There's always a good reason.
Indeed there is.
I'm always early. I'm always frightened of being late. I'm never late.
That's good. Stay frightened, Bridie. That's good. Because we're so scary that you'll get told off.
Well, yeah, a job, anything. You know, I had to be in the office on the dot.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm always early for things.
Always early. Scared is a bit strong, isn't it? I use that all the time when I really don't mean it.
Hi, Kathy. Good to
Hi,
see
Kathy.
you. We're waiting for the thunderstorms, you know. The BBC says 10 o'clock tonight they're going to start, and then we'll have them all night, or most of the night. And I just saw on the news that Aberystwyth's got flash flooding. The streets are several inches deep in water, so I hope that's not coming here. So 1 more minute and then we'll begin. I'll then say a little bit about Saccacitta and we'll start. I believe we had Dayaka did last week. Was anybody there at the Dayaka evening? Any of you there? Yeah? Yeah. Is it okay? Was it good? Yeah. Good.
It was very good.
Okay. I decided that was one holiday break too many. I was on holiday in Shropshire and I had to come on and do the class. I was teaching a Buddhism class with Claire and I thought, well, that I do have to do, but I was blowed if I was going to keep turning up in the evenings on my holiday. That's one sacrifice too many, I think. Okay, so we're on 5 minutes. It's fine if people arrive a little bit later. It's no problem. So very, very welcome to you all, and also to anybody who's here on YouTube as well. So tonight, my friend Saccacitta is going to be leading you in the meditation practice. I don't know much about what he's going to do, only a little, but I'll leave him to explain all that. Yeah, I've known Saccacitta quite a long time, actually. Back in the days when he was Leo, he supported Maharashtra sometimes in in helping lead and teach my study group, as I recall. I think that's how I first got to know him. Yeah, he's a family man, has 2 children, lives in Manchester, and a full-time job, or largely full-time job, as supporting researchers at the University of Manchester. And yeah, really dedicated practitioner in his own way, very individual way, which is what I really love, actually, I have to say. And really, really smart guy. Yeah, always interesting, lots of good ideas. So now I've probably sunk him completely. I feel sorry for him now because you have to leave following on from that. But anyway, welcome Saccacitta, and hand over to you.
Okay, thanks, Sila Bodhi. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah. It's okay?
A bit louder, please.
All right, I'll try my best. Yeah, so as we mentioned, last week was Dayaka's session on loving kindness. And I think that fits, we didn't plan it this way, but it fits quite well with what I plan to do today. Because loving kindness, or the Metta-bhavana, is one of the Brahmaviharas. And so I'm assuming that everybody who's listening in has done the Metta-bhavana. And so the Brahmaviharas are a collection of 4 meditations. And so one of them is the Metta-bhavana, a second one, and they're all kind of structured actually the same way as the Metta-bhavana. So in other words, you would take, in the Metta-bhavana, you take a friend, and then you take a neutral person, and then you take a difficult person, and then you sort of extend out to all people, all beings. And so then the object there is obviously loving kindness. But in the other Brahmaviharas, in one case, you replace the friend. So in a way, the first person is the one that kind of sets the scene. You're looking at a response, a compassionate response to suffering that they might have. So that's a second meditation. And then a third meditation is sympathetic joy to someone else's happiness. So there we have 3. And then the fourth one is where we kind of in turn, for the same person, we kind of reflect that at times they have suffering, and sometimes they have happiness. So we sort of move backwards and forwards. And the state of mind here, the Brahmavihara, as it were, is sometimes translated as equanimity. I personally don't really like that translation, maybe just because of the association with the word, because I feel it's missing kind of a bit of depth and wisdom and the mental kind of resilience and yeah, sort of pliability that it gives you. So yeah, but that's just a personal preference. I think equanimity for me doesn't quite hit the mark. So as you would have seen, hopefully from the title, that I'm going to do 2 sessions. Actually, no, from the title, it was the Brahmaviharas and mental resilience. And I plan to do 2 sessions on this. So tonight obviously is the first one. And the next one will be on the 31st of this month, so 31st of August. If you were here last week, Dayaka's approach to meditation was very much grounded in the body. And I plan to reinforce that or repeat it, so it fits quite well with my approach. But of course, I'll be looking at a much more mental kind of aspect of that. So working with the body is kind of quite good at settling us down and giving us some grounding. And that grounding word, you know, applies to the mind as well. And Daika gave an example last week where he kind of lost his grounding because just before the session, his chickens went berserk, and I think it was a fox or a cat was after one of the chickens. And so he was a bit flustered. And so he was just sort of reflecting on how easy it is to lose your grounding. So Sila Bodhi introduced me already. So my name is Saccacitta, and like he said, I have a day job. I work at a local university, and I'm a scientific data analyst. So, you know, needs quite a lot of very clear thinking to do that job. And my name, Saccacitta, kind of alludes to that. So the Sacca part means truth, and the Chitta bit means mind. So it's kind of truth mind, or it was explained to me like I'm a mind that's attracted to the truth. He also mentioned that I have a family, and I have 2 kids who are in the house, and we might hear from them. But in fact, I gave them the YouTube link, so they might actually be listening. So if you're there, hello. And I'm also a very keen meditator. Meditation has been my sort of primary, you could say, connection or primary way into Buddhism. I used to teach meditation at the Manchester Buddhist Centre quite a lot, but I actually haven't for the last 2 years. So this feels a bit like, at first for me, like the first time around, and it's certainly the first time on Zoom. Anyway, thanks Sila Bodhi for encouraging me, inviting me to do it. Okay, so tonight in our first session, so we are looking at Brahmaviharas and mental resilience. Now, the specific topic that I want to do within that is to introduce us, to encourage us, to strengthen, because you're probably already starting this, a sort of an inquiring approach, a more exploring approach, and a much more receptive approach to how the mind is. So I'll be bringing this into the meditation tonight because I decided to do this because it's particularly important for the Brahmaviharas. So it's not about us telling the mind, now you need to have loving kindness, or now you have to have a compassionate response. So it's definitely not that kind of giving instruction in that way. And so it's much more a case of exploring the reactions and how your mind works with that. So that's what I would like to encourage us to do. And that's kind of the focus for this evening. Now, at this point, I could just start us on the meditation. But I suppose I have a little concern that since you don't know me very well, and since we're not in the same room together, that I'm not really sure if what I say is sort of going to be understood in the right way. I mean, you never know that anyway, but with Zoom, it feels a little bit easier to kind of lose track of your audience in that way. So I thought I'd say a bit more, just so you could get a feel for, you know, who I am, the way I think, and that. So this isn't a definite instruction, as it were, to the meditation. This is just kind of setting the scene, getting you used to the idea. So it's kind of just relax and let it flow over you. Don't sort of get too hung up on particular things. But on the other hand, if something I say sparks interest, or something I say raises a concern, by all means, jot it down, maybe have a pen and paper, and we can come back to that in the second half if you like. I've got a few options for the second half, but we'll see how we go. Okay, so just sit back and let me sort of explain some thoughts I've had over the last few days as I've been reflecting on leading Brahmaviharas and mental resilience. Okay, so the thinking mind in Buddhism, and I say thinking mind because mind gets quite complicated and Buddhism has a tendency to analyze things. And so I'm just talking about ordinary mind. So thinking mind in Buddhism is regarded as one of the 6 senses, along with the 5 senses that we're sort of familiar with in the Western tradition of sight, hearing, smell, touch, and taste. Yeah. So this is quite curious. I know the first time I heard that, it was a bit curious. Oh, so Buddhism considered the mind, in other words, the thinking mind, as a sense. Now, this is quite a deep subject, actually, from a Buddhist perspective, and you probably, I certainly continue to sort of appreciate what that means. But I think even if you've heard it before, and you've taken it in and you've reflected on it, there's probably still bits of you that are still very much stuck in our Western tradition. And in our Western tradition, I think the mind is seen more in a kind of absolute terms, maybe as the self, or where the self resides. There's that famous quote from the philosopher Descartes, "I think, therefore I am." And brain death is also the legal definition in our society of death. You know, especially with medical science, people get kept alive in so many different ways, but brain death is the definition of death. So we're very much sort of, that's what we're bringing to the situation, is we associate our mind with who we are. Now, we also have other influences in the West. So psychology has been kind of slowly chipping away at that. So through psychology, we very much aware now that our perception and how we interpret a situation is based on quite a few conditions. You know, there might be the people around you, or your past experiences, particularly maybe when you were very young. Because when we're very young, our brains are quite pliable, and we're not yet set in our ways. So the influences you have from, you know, your family and from your environment kind of shape who you are and shape your mind. So psychology is kind of moving us towards the Buddhist point of view, where the mind is not just a clear, neutral observer, but rather the mind interprets. Yeah, and so it's often compared to sight, I think, another sense, obviously, that we're more familiar with. And a lot of analogies are there already. So we talk about a clear mind, just like being able to see on a clear day. Or we talk about a foggy brain. Like if it's foggy, you can't really, you're not sure what you're seeing ahead of, in front of you. You know? And I think these days, you know, and I'm talking about the last 10 years, a questioning approach to sight is even more important, because we've got virtual reality, we've got fake news, we've got photoshopped and airbrushed photos. These are things that, you know, are just an everyday reality for us now. And so we've got used to seeing is not believing, right? So we're starting to have a questioning approach to do with sight. And so I think in a way that's quite natural for us then to move over and say, well, hold on with the mind. I'm seeing this, I'm having a certain reaction, and just sort of gently asking, is this really true? You know, so I think that's kind of helpful. We can extend that metaphor. You know. So as I say, I'm mentioning this kind of as a background, so we can be a more kind of receptive perhaps to an inquiring approach in meditation. I mean, in so many ways, the mind is just unfathomable and it's mysterious. And some of the greatest minds in the world, some of the great philosophers through history have pondered the question of, you know, mind, self, thoughts, feelings, how do that all relate? And so we've already gained lots of benefits from these people having reflected on their way. And of course, we've had our own experiences. You know, we've brought our life experiences, all the experiences you have today, we've brought in, and we've got a certain understanding of that. And hopefully now, by learning to meditate, we can extend these discoveries, extend these observations, and just be quite a questioning and inquiring about our experience. So another point in our favor today, as in, in 2020, is apart from the psychology, is the knowledge we have about biological knowledge, so we know that memories are held in neurons in the brain, and we know that different parts of the brain deal with different thoughts. So we're starting to see that there's a machine there, there's a mechanism going on. It's not some absolute truth, things are working. And we also are aware, and I know this is a field of study, I've been quite interested in reading about this, is that certain reactions are kind of hardwired in humans. You're kind of born with it. Things like disgust. So babies all over the world, different cultures, different races, have the same kind of way of expressing disgust. So it's kind of hardwired in you. But then, of course, children have such a long period before they become adults, probably longer than any other animal. And in that time, we're learning reactions. So there's this whole area of flexible kind of pathways, the way our minds work, and there's fixed ways as well. And these flexible pathways are up for adjustment. Sorry about that, I'll try and switch that noisy thing off. And so with effort, and meditation is one way of doing it, we can start to change these things. If we find that certain triggers snap us into depression, certain triggers snap us into anger, we can start to soften it up a bit. Okay, so as I say, I'm just talking free flowing here. Let's see how much we're doing for time. Yep. So a final point I wanted to make, because this is also quite important. I know I'm a scientist, so I think in these ways, but what we're learning is the connection, and I'm sure you've heard about this, between the mind and the body. So I think religious people of centuries back kind of associated the body maybe with the earthly impulses, and the mind and the soul with heaven. And so there was a bit of a disconnect. And obviously this is me as a non-Christian talking like this. And I guess I'm just taking it very superficially. But the point is, today, the science is telling us that these things are very much connected. Okay, so when we experience fear, for example, we get this surge of adrenaline, a hormone in our body, and our bodies go on alert. So we have an increase in our heart rate, we have elevation of the blood pressure, our airways expand as a result, our pupils dilate, the blood goes into our muscles, we get ready to fight or to run away. And we also have production of glucose, which is especially valuable to the brain, so that the brain can react fast. And so fear has a strong component in the body. And in fact, all the strong kind of feelings that we have, so that could be love or anger or grief or despondency or pleasure, all of these have a kind of a chemical component that prepares the body for what it's experiencing. In fact, it's kind of a point that's it's kind of a deep psychology study at the moment, where people are wondering if you can actually feel anything without a body, almost like a computer or something where we're devoid. And I personally don't think you can, but obviously I don't have evidence for this. I think the body is intrinsic to it. So anyway, let me not digress on that all too much, but the point is that from our perspective, being slightly, say, mindful and a little bit detached from our response, because some of our responses we might not really like, maybe getting too angry too quickly, for example, or being, having too much fear when it doesn't seem reasonable. it's quite hard to be objective about it because of the physical manifestation of it, like I've just said. So our whole body is telling us, we wake up in the middle of the night, terrified, can't get back to sleep. Our body's telling us something's wrong. Yeah, but if we know that the mind and the body are very connected, we can start to unpuzzle. And of course, we already have experience of this. You know, when we're children, we come to understand that a nightmare is only a nightmare. But you know, there might still be areas where we're not too sure and we don't know how to sort of uncouple the two. And I think realizing that the body is so connected with the mind can help us to sort of just be a little bit more gentle and not be too swept away all the time. Anyway, those are my thoughts. I think I've only just touched on what Buddhism has to offer here. I think, like I said, this point about mind as a sense is very interesting. And I would really encourage people, you know, if you have interest or time, to study Buddhism, what Buddhism has to say. And, you know, we call that the Dharma. And especially, say, the Yogacara school, which is a meditation school, has a lot of profound insight into what the mind is and how it works, and etc. Okay, I'll leave it there. So hopefully that was of interest. And I think what we'll do now is have a meditation, and we'll do the Metta Bhavana, but we'll do a Metta Bhavana with the emphasis on what I was just saying, an exploratory approach. Yeah. So I often meditate with the eyes open. So if you see me with my eyes open, that's not because I'm not meditating, but you can choose. So we'll begin with a body scan. And I usually do this from the toes upwards. So just bring awareness down to your feet, down to your toes. And every time we get to that part of the body, you can just move that part of the body a bit. So just wriggle your toes. Bring some awareness to that area. And then into the feet in general. So exploring the instep, the heel. Maybe also noticing when you wriggle your toes, what's doing that, what's moving the toes. You can probably feel the muscles higher up in the leg. Maybe feel the tendons running down to your toes. So this takes us up to our calves and our shins and our knees. And further up to our thighs, big strong muscles, maybe the strongest muscles in our body here in our thighs. So we just try and relax that enough to still keep our meditation posture. And becoming aware of the bones. You don't really have that much sensation in the bones unless they hurt you, but just try to imagine. So we've got the big leg bones coming up into the pelvic area. And just maybe thinking about what kind of joint that is. It's a very nice joint that allows the leg to be quite maneuverable, round as well as forward and backwards. Just trying to relax into your hip area. Just relaxing all the muscles. As we go further up the body, I'm going to ask you to bring your awareness around the back. So we're going to sit nice and tall, maybe just stretch your back as long as it will go. Imagine you're being pulled up to the ceiling. Stretch your back nice and tight. And then just settle back to what feels comfortable. So we follow the spinal cord up between the ribs, between the shoulder blades. Maybe just roll your shoulders a bit. Get a bit of looseness in there, a bit of feeling in there. And then just run your awareness down the arms to your elbows, further down your forearms, down to your fingers, and you can just wave your fingers, wave any tension off that you might have been holding in the shoulders. So coming back up the arms to the shoulders, to the neck. And again, the neck can be a place where we hold on to tension, so you can just gently move your head, roll the head. And then just allow the head to find its natural point of balance. It's quite interesting if you find that point and then you move your head ever so slightly to the left or to the right or backwards and forwards. Very quickly you feel, yeah, that's not that point of balance. So it's quite a sensitive, exquisite kind of balance sensitivity that we have in the head. And then we just relax the face, relax the eyes, relax the cheeks, relax the lips, the tongue. And then we come down the front again. So now we just settle at a position in the center, but kind of at the height of your heart. We just keep our attention on that heart space in the center of our chest for a minute. Maybe just asking how that feels, how does the heart feel? Is it a bit cold? Is it a bit warm? Is it a bit empty? Full? And then we go further down, past the solar plexus. We just pause there and take a few deep breaths using the diaphragm. And then we go further down to the point that Dayaka mentioned last week, which is a point just below the navel, probably about 2 or 3 fingers below our navel. Quite an important point in some schools of Buddhism. And again, we just settle the attention there. Just noticing if there's any sensation. Maybe just breathing into that area. I know that's a figurative explanation, but we can do that. Just imagine the breath going anywhere. It can go to any area of the body we want. Just imagine as you're breathing in that that's where the air's going. Okay, so from here, we're now gently going to move into the Metta Bhavana. And so our training today, our emphasis today is on receptivity and exploration. So we can just ask ourselves, how are we? How am I? And everything's okay. By being receptive, we mean the answer might not be what we want it to be. We just listen. Another approach, quite a playful approach, is to use symbols. You could say, this is all about how are you, how am I? If I was weather, what kind of weather do we have today? Are we sunny? Are we rainy? Is there the occasional cloud? Or is it just a wet soup fog? What's the weather today? Okay, so let's leave the first stage. So before we move on, maybe just reconnecting with that bodily grounding that we had. Just scan through the body, toe to head. Check the breathing is settled down nicely. So of course in stage 2 we pick a friend. And in this approach where we're being receptive, we're exploring, all we need to do is imagine the person. We don't need to be pushing anything about being kind and loving. We just imagine the person in front of us. And sometimes the body tells us more than our mind. How does that feel, being in the presence of our friend? Is there warmth? Warmth in interesting places, maybe our heart, our tummy, our throat. Sometimes our friends annoy us. Is there something there? Is there something they said that we sort of need to process? We just keep them in mind. Sometimes you can liven it up by imagining you're walking along the street and without expecting it, you just walk around the corner and you bump into your friend. So if you just play that through, just noticing how the body responds. Okay, so let's let the friend go. End of stage 2. Again, just reconnecting, maybe adjusting your posture to be comfortable. And then we pick a neutral person. And again, all we have to do is imagine the person, maybe imagine them where they tend to be when we see them, because as a neutral person, we maybe don't see them that much. Imagine them in their situation, in their garden, in their office. in the park, on the street. And then just checking our body. How do we feel in their presence? Something that we keep them distant with, maybe, and that's okay. It's natural to have neutral people in our lives. Just noticing how that feels in the body, to be quite clear about our boundaries with this person. How's that feel in the body? How does that manifest in the body? Okay, let's let the neutral person go. Again, just making sure we're in touch with our body, with our breathing. Then we're going to pick a difficult person. And my suggestion here, again, we just want to imagine their presence, but maybe being a difficult person, let's not imagine them too close. So we keep them at a safe distance, but we get a good look at them. Really bring them to mind at that distance. Just notice how we feel. Do we tighten up? And again, that's okay. We're trying not to judge, we're trying to observe, we're trying to explore. If that's going okay, to be in their presence, we could maybe bring them a bit closer. Just noticing how we feel. You can play with this. Bring them closer and closer. If it gets difficult, we can push them away a bit. Just experiment with that. Okay, so we can let that person go now. Let them drift off a bit. Not too far, because we're going to include all people now. So we'll recall the friend, we recall the neutral person and the difficult person. And we just sit in the presence of 3 people, and gradually we include more and more people, people in our home, our neighbors, the people on our Zoom here, people on YouTube who might be listening in. People in your city, Manchester, and gradually out. You don't have to stop at the country or the world. It could be all beings, all life, anywhere. Infinite beings in infinite space. So much that the mind just gives up and just relaxes in spaciousness. Okay, just before we end, you can just bring the awareness back to the room where you are, back to your body. I'm afraid I don't have a nice bell. You could imagine that. And we just bring the meditation to a close. And maybe see you in 10 minutes or so.
Well, thanks, Saccacitta. And just to say thank you also to the YouTube, anyone who was with us on YouTube now, as we leave and have, Saccacitta says, a tea break for about 10 minutes. So maybe about 8:05 would be a good